cold, sterile light of the interrogation chamber reflected off the polished durasteel walls, illuminating the faces of the three figures seated around a low, hexagonal table. On one side, two beings of the Atrian hegemony, species 743 on the galactic classification scale, sat rigid and imposing. Their skin, a mottled gray-green, was tough and scaled. Their eyes, multiple and faceted, shimmered with an unsettling intelligence. Commander HFY, the senior interrogator, was a towering figure, his mandibles clicking with barely contained impatience. His counterpart, researcher Threll, was smaller, more wiry, his 6 slender fingers dancing over a datapad, eager to record the expected confession. Across from them, seemingly unimpressed by the intimidating presence, sat a human. John, as he had introduced himself, was a deceptively ordinary specimen of species 681. His short, dark hair was slightly disheveled. His blue eyes, startlingly bright in the harsh light, scanned the room with a calm that HFY found utterly baffling. He wore a simple, gray jumpsuit, standard issue for all detention subjects, yet on John, it seemed almost defiant. Subject John, HFY's voice, a guttural rasp translated perfectly by the universal translator embedded in the table, echoed in the small chamber. You are accused of unauthorized entry into restricted hegemony space, multiple acts of property damage, and the willful obstruction of justice. John leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. I was lost, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the severity of the charges. And I merely redirected a few asteroids that were on a collision course with my vessel. As for obstruction, I believe I was merely attempting to explain my predicament. Threll snorted, a sound like gravel shifting. Lost? In a fully mapped sector of the galaxy. And you redirected hegemony mining facilities? Your explanation is illogical, human. Perhaps, John conceded, his smile widening slightly. But then, humanity has always been a little illogical, wouldn't you agree? HFY slammed a scaled fist on the table. The sound, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, was designed to intimidate. John didn't flinch. Do not mock us, human. The Atrian hegemony has been policing this sector for millennia. We have seen countless species attempt to defy our laws. None have succeeded. I'm not trying to defy anything, Commander, John replied, his gaze unwavering. I'm just trying to understand why you're so angry. This calm, almost infuriatingly reasonable response only served to further irritate HFY. Angry? We are performing our duty. You have trespassed, endangered our assets, and now you equivocate. We will extract the truth, human. One way or another. Threll, ever the scientist, chimed in. Our psychological interrogation techniques are renowned throughout the quadrant. We can break any mind, human, even yours. He held up his datapad, displaying complex neural scans and psychological profiles. We have studied your species, your emotional vulnerabilities, your cognitive biases. We know exactly how to dismantle your resistance. John simply nodded, a contemplative look on his face. I'm sure you do, but have you ever considered that perhaps you don't know everything? The Atrians exchanged a glance. This human was different. Most species, when confronted with the Atrian hegemony's reputation, quivered. They offered desperate pleas, fabricated excuses, anything to avoid the full extent of Atrian justice. John, however, seemed to view the entire process as a rather dull academic exercise. Let us begin with the unauthorized entry. HFY began, his voice dropping to a low growl, laced with a subtle sonic frequency designed to induce anxiety. Your vessel, the Starseeker, was detected within restricted zone 7 Gamma. Why were you there? John sighed, a small, almost theatrical sound. As I said, I was lost. My FTL drive experienced a minor quantum flux anomaly. I was attempting a manual recalibration when I drifted into your territory. It was an accident. Threll's faceted eyes narrowed. Our sensors detected deliberate evasive maneuvers. Your drifting involved multiple high G turns and a brief burst of hyperacceleration. That was the manual recalibration, John explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. When the quantum flux occurs, the ship's navigation systems can become erratic. I was trying to correct its course, prevent it from impacting something important like, say, a hegemony mining facility. HFY's mandibles clicked. And the property damage? Our facilities were not redirected. They were impacted. Significantly. John's brow furrowed. Ah yes, that. Well, in my defense, I did try to warn them. I broadcasted multiple distress signals. I even attempted to communicate directly. But your automated defense grid, it just kept firing. Our automated defense grid is designed to repel intruders, HFY bellowed, rising slightly from his seat. And it was doing a very good job of it, John agreed, nodding earnestly. But it was firing at my ship, which was trying to avoid hitting your facilities. It became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, wouldn't you say? If it hadn't kept firing, I might have had more time to maneuver. Threll tapped rapidly on his datapad. This is preposterous. Your story is full of inconsistencies and logical fallacies. To a highly logical species, perhaps, John said, shrugging. But humans, we're not always logical. Sometimes we just react. And sometimes those reactions, while not strictly logical, can be surprisingly effective. HFY leaned forward, his voice now a low, menacing hiss. We have ways of making you truthful, human. We can access your memories, extract your deepest fears, expose your hidden motives. John's smile faded, replaced by a look of genuine concern. Is that really necessary, Commander? I'm telling you the truth, from my perspective. Perhaps your perspective is simply different. The Atrians were used to fear. They were accustomed to defiance, to desperation, to cunning attempts to deceive. What they were not accustomed to was this disarming, almost childlike sincerity. It was infuriating. Let us move on to the obstruction of justice, Threll stated, his voice tight with frustration. When our patrol vessels boarded your ship, you resisted. You deployed a smoke bomb, and then proceeded to disable multiple Atrian officers with what you later described as Nerf darts. John winced. Okay, in my defense on that one, I didn't know they were hegemony vessels at first. They just appeared out of nowhere, firing warning shots. I thought I was being raided by pirates. And the smoke bomb was just a recreational fog machine. The Nerf darts, well, I keep those for stress relief and target practice. I didn't want to actually hurt anyone. Just slow them down until I could figure out what was going on. HFY felt a vain throb in his temple. This human was either an unparalleled master of deception or genuinely, profoundly, unbelievably idiotic. He was leaning towards the latter, which was, in some ways, even more unsettling. You disabled 3 of our finest officers with foam projectiles, HFY thundered. And no permanent injuries, I presume? John asked, his eyes wide with feigned innocence. I aimed for fleshy, non-critical areas. The shoulder, the thigh. I'm actually quite good with them. Threll threw his hands up in exasperation. This is ridiculous. We will not tolerate this charade, human. We will begin the neural interrogation. It will be unpleasant for you, but ultimately, enlightening for us. John's expression darkened slightly. Neural interrogation? You mean mind reading? A far more advanced procedure, Threll corrected, a note of pride in his voice. We will access your subconscious, unravel your true intentions, and expose your lies. I see, John said slowly. He paused, his gaze drifting to a faint scratch on the polished wall. You know, humans have a saying, be careful what you wish for. Some things are best left undisturbed. HFY interpreted this as a pathetic attempt at a threat. Are you implying we will find something unsettling, human? Some dark secret? Some hidden weapon? John looked back at them, a strange, almost pitying expression on his face. Oh, Commander, far worse. you might find yourselves. The Atrians dismissed this as more human nonsense. They activated the neural interrogation device, a complex array of electrodes and energy emitters that extended from the ceiling. A faint hum filled the chamber as the device lowered towards John. "Do not resist, human," Threll warned, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Resistance will only prolong the process. It will amplify the discomfort." John closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then, surprisingly, began to laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh or a desperate one. It was a soft, almost wistful chuckle, as if at some private, amusing memory. "I'm not resisting," he said, opening his eyes and meeting Xylar's gaze. "I'm just preparing you for the ride." The device made contact, a soft click indicating full neural linkage. Threll initiated the scan. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then Threll gasped a sharp choke sound. His faceted eyes widened, flickering with an intensity that Xylar had never seen. "Threll? What is it?" Xylar demanded, a flicker of unease finally starting to prickle at him. Threll didn't respond directly. He was staring at the readings on his datapad, his slender fingers trembling as they tried to scroll through the torrent of information. His mouth hung open, his breathing becoming shallow and ragged. Suddenly, a holographic projection materialized in the center of the table, emanating from the neural device. It was a memory, a snippet from John's mind, rendered with astonishing clarity. The Atrians saw a vast, sprawling city, unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Towers of impossible height pierced a sky choked with smog, yet beneath the grime, there was an undeniable beauty in the intricate architecture, the vibrant lights, the sheer audacity of it all. They saw vehicles, millions of them, rushing along multi-layered highways, a chaotic dance of metal and energy. The sound, translated directly from John's memory, was deafening. A symphony of horns, engines, countless human voices. "What is this?" Xylar whispered, utterly mesmerized. Threll, still fixated on his datapad, managed to choke out, "Early Earth urban center circa 21st century." The image shifted, and now they were in a dark, confined space. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and fear. The sounds of desperate shouts and the metallic clang of weapons echoed around them. Humans, their faces grim and determined, were huddled together, defending a narrow corridor against an unseen enemy. Explosions rocked the room, and the Atrians felt a jolt of pure terror as a human, covered in grime and blood, roared defiance at the encroaching darkness. "Conflict, military, a siege," Threll stammered, his body beginning to tremble. The hologram flickered again, and now they were in a different scene entirely. A barren, windswept plain under a sky of swirling, alien colors. A small group of humans, clad in bulky suits, were painstakingly setting up equipment, their faces obscured by visors. One of them, a woman, turned and looked out at the desolate landscape, her posture radiating an unshakable resolve. She was utterly alone, yet utterly unbroken. Exploration, a new world, the very edge of the known galaxy. Threll's voice was barely a whisper now. His body had begun to spasm, his scaled skin taking on an unnatural, pale hue. Xylar watched, horrified, as the images flashed by, an unrelenting torrent of human experience. He saw moments of profound joy, a child's laughter echoing through a sunlit field, lovers embracing under a starlit sky, families gathered around a festive table. He saw moments of unimaginable sorrow, faces contorted in grief, silent tears falling onto freshly turned earth, the quiet despair of loneliness. He saw acts of breathtaking cruelty, humans inflicting pain on other humans, wars that scarred entire continents, moments of unthinking brutality. And then, almost immediately, he saw acts of astonishing compassion. Hands reaching out to help, sacrifices made for strangers, lives dedicated to healing and protecting. The sheer volume of emotion, of experience, was overwhelming. It wasn't just individual memories. It was the collective consciousness, the echoes of billions of lives, spanning millennia. The Atrians, a species that valued logic, order, and control above all else, were being bombarded with the messy, glorious, terrifying chaos of humanity. Threll let out a pained shriek, clutching his head. The datapad clattered to the floor, its screen displaying a chaotic swirl of neural patterns, impossible to decipher. The holographic projection flickered wildly, the images accelerating, overlapping, becoming a dizzying kaleidoscope of human existence. Xylar watched as Threll's eyes rolled back in his head, a thin stream of greenish fluid beginning to trickle from his mandibles. The researcher was experiencing a complete system overload, his mind unable to process the sheer, unbridled intensity of human reality. "Shut it down!" Xylar roared, scrambling towards the controls. But his scaled hands fumbled, his own mind reeling from the residual psychic echoes emanating from the device. He felt a tremor in his own controlled psyche, a faint echo of the human emotional storm that threatened to engulf them all. John, his eyes still closed, seemed to absorb the mental maelstrom with a serene calm. He wasn't resisting, he was simply enduring, and by enduring, he was revealing. The hologram settled on a single image, freezing the chaotic torrent into a moment of poignant beauty. It was a human hand, scarred and calloused, gently cradling a tiny, fragile bird that had fallen from its nest. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow on the scene. The image pulsed with an overwhelming sense of tenderness, of a quiet, fierce protectiveness. Then, John's eyes snapped open. He looked at the two Atrians, one twitching uncontrollably on the floor, the other frozen in horror, his body rigid, his breathing shallow. "See," John said, his voice quiet, almost mournful. "I told you it might be unsettling." The neural device powered down, the hum dying, the electrodes retracting. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Threll's whimpering and Xylar's ragged gasps. Xylar slowly turned his gaze to John. The human sat there, perfectly still, his blue eyes holding a depth that Xylar suddenly realized he had utterly failed to perceive. He had seen John as a simple subject, a species to be categorized and controlled. Now, he saw a living, breathing paradox. What was that?" Xylar finally managed to whisper, his voice rough with shock. John sighed. "That was just a small taste, Commander. A little glimpse into what it means to be human. The good, the bad, the ugly, the utterly inexplicable. We love, we hate, we build, we destroy, we create beauty from chaos, and chaos from order. We laugh at our own folly and weep for our own mistakes. We reach for the stars even as we cling to the dirt beneath our feet." He paused, a faint, melancholic smile returning to his lips. "And sometimes we get lost. And when we get lost, we try to fix things. Even if it means accidentally redirecting a few of your mining facilities with a quantum flux anomaly and some well-aimed Nerf darts." Xylar looked at Threll, who was now curled into a fetal position, muttering incoherently about infinite variables and unpredictable emotional vectors. The formidable Atrian researcher, renowned for his mental fortitude, had been utterly broken by a mere sliver of human experience. The commander's own mind felt altered. He had always viewed emotions as a weakness, a chaotic force to be suppressed in the pursuit of logical efficiency. But what he had just witnessed was not weakness. It was a raw, undeniable power, a force of nature, untamed and unconquerable. He saw the wars, the suffering, the cruelty, and he felt a brief, instinctive revulsion. But then, he remembered the hand cradling the bird, the quiet acts of heroism, the relentless pursuit of knowledge even in the face of despair. He saw the capacity for both immense darkness and unimaginable light, coexisting within the same fragile vessel. We didn't understand," Xylar admitted, the words feeling alien and clumsy in his mandibles. "We saw a species that defied our logic, and we attempted to force it into our framework." John nodded. "That's a common mistake. With humans, there is no framework. Or rather, the framework is constantly shifting, evolving, breaking, and rebuilding itself. We are a species of contradictions, Commander. A species that will risk everything for a cause and then squabble over the smallest triviality. HFY felt a profound sense of humility, something he hadn't experienced in centuries. He, the hardened interrogator of the Atrian hegemony, had been utterly unprepared for the sheer, unadulterated humanity of his subject. He had expected secrets, conspiracies, hidden agendas. He had found something far more complex, far more challenging. So, you truly were just lost? HFY asked, the question laced with a hesitant uncertainty that was entirely uncharacteristic. John shrugged. Mostly, and I really was trying to avoid hitting your stuff. And those Nerf darts, they're actually quite good for self-defense when you don't want to cause permanent injury. HFY stared at him, then at his convulsing colleague. The charges against John suddenly seemed utterly trivial, lost in the overwhelming tide of what they had just witnessed. How could you apply standard hegemony law to a species that contains such an astonishing, bewildering universe within itself? What do you want? HFY asked, the question escaping him before he could censor it. John looked genuinely surprised. Want? I just want to go home, Commander, and maybe get my FTL drive fixed. And perhaps, if it's not too much trouble, a cup of coffee. Real coffee. None of that nutrient paste you call a beverage. HFY blinked, his multifaceted eyes slowly focusing on the mundane request. After the cosmic journey through John's mind, the desire for a simple cup of coffee felt profoundly, beautifully human. He looked at the still trembling Threll, then back at John, who was now patiently waiting, a faint, expectant smile on his face. The Atrian hegemony had spent millennia trying to categorize, understand, and control the myriad species of the galaxy. They had always believed that with enough data, enough logic, any being could be dissected and managed. But humanity was an anomaly. A glorious, terrifying, beautiful anomaly that defied all classification. HFY activated his comms, his voice still a little shaky. Release subject John. Provide him with a full diagnostic of his vessel and facilitate immediate repairs. And procure some coffee. Explain the situation to the customs agents. He is a unique case. The guards outside, having heard the strange sounds and commotion within the chamber, looked at each other in confusion. They had never heard Commander HFY sound so utterly. Bewildered John stood up, stretching his limbs, a faint crackle of joints echoing in the silent room. He glanced at Threll, still whimpering on the floor, and a look of genuine regret crossed his face. I am truly sorry about your colleague, Commander, he said, his voice soft. I tried to warn you. HFY simply nodded, still processing the immense shift in his worldview. He watched as John walked towards the door, his seemingly ordinary human gait now imbued with an almost mythic significance. As John reached the exit, he paused, turning back to face HFY. You know, he said, a mischievous glint in his blue eyes, I actually did have a backup plan for getting out of here. Involved a lot of glitter and a particularly loud kazoo. HFY stared, speechless. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated humanity of it all. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.